And that's the way they approached the business, recognizing the fact that they had a product to offer which nobody knew anything about, really. So one of the shows we went to, not too long a time later, was held at Laconia, during the race at Laconia, New Hampshire. And that was the year that the wild 3%ers showed up from New York and around, and they had a riot at Laconia that year. State cops and everybody showed up, and Mr. Kawashima, who was the head of American Honda Motor Company, said, if this is what racing is in the United States, Honda will not race. And so, even though we would read in the English magazines and so forth of Hondas starting to race in Europe, there was no racing in the United States, which kind of bothers me because I was running a team of G50s at the time, but the AMA barred them, so the only place I could run was to take them to Canada and run to Canada. And if you, any of you were in the business a long time ago, will remember that in the parts book, all the parts books, CB750 and so forth, which came later than the CB71, always in the back pages there were racing parts. That's because Mr. Honda basically was a racer. He and I got along fine, even though we didn't speak the same language. He didn't speak English, and I didn't speak Japanese. We could communicate because our interest was the same. And that's how I got to know Mr. Honda. And he would come to the States every once in a while for a meeting of some kind or another. And being in Gardena, which I was at that time, I would get to see him. You know, no big buddy thing. You know, I wasn't a big buddy he is, but I was able to communicate with him. And that's what gets me into what I'm coming up to. So here we are, the four of us, invited to visit Japan. One of the places we visited was the R&D section. And in some of the past things, I had met a man by the name of Mr. Harada. Mr. Harada was the main engineer of the CB750, and I was invited to help test them and so forth, because they bring them the new bikes up to the United States, which is another sad story, because they would come in without paying any duty so long as they were part of the company business. And I was talking to somebody the other day, they mentioned that they watched some brand new motorcycles with a cutting torch, and they just cut them up and chopped them up and threw them down and the junk. And that's because they never paid duty on those machines, and they were not therefore allowed to be sold. But Mr. Harada was the head of R&D. So here I'm going and visiting R&D, and I knew Mr. Harada, who spoke fairly good English, and somewhat knew Mr. Honda. And the first thing we did, the four of us, was get a guided tour through R&D, because Mr. Honda was off having his English lesson and couldn't be there first thing in the morning. So we were going through R&D, and somehow or another I picked up, he said, the guide said, well, I can't take you over to that area. That's a test area, and they're doing tests on a new engine. And somebody slipped and said the new engine was a twin. Okay, so Mr. Honda showed up, and there's a table like this one, only a heck of a lot longer. And all the engineers at R&D were at this table, and they were sitting up and down. Mr. Honda sat here, and the interpreter sat here. And so I sat here. And so Mr. Honda says, we are going to build a big motorcycle. It will be called and known as King of Motorcycles. And brash American like me, I'm sitting here, and I'm not afraid of the man anyhow, big a man as he was. So I say, that's good. I hope it's not a twin. And when you talk to somebody who uses an interpreter, you can watch the interpreter telling. It gives you some time to kind of keep an eye on the guy. So Mr. Honda goes, wow, I could see his eyes bug out and everything. Well, Mr. Hansen, why do you say that? I said, well, I said, a twin is a very old design. Even now, Triumph is working on a 3-cylinder. So if Honda will be king of motorcycles, must be 4-cylinder. And Mr. Honda said, oh, we have much experience about 4-cylinder. Because remember, that's what they were racing in Europe for so long. I said, that's exactly right. I said, that's why king of motorcycles must be 4-cylinder. How many exhaust pipes should CB750 have? Oh, I said, 4, of course. Oh, very easy to make sound down with 4 mufflers. I said, exactly. And another call that I got not too long after that said, Mr. Hansen, how many CB750 do you think we sell? All right. So I grab a number out the sky. I said, 25,000. Oh, no, I don't think so. That's the advent of the Sandcast. And after they sell about 7,000 of the things, they say, hey, we are going to sell it. Maybe Mr. Hansen has the right idea. So now you're coming to permanent mold. So that's what happened. I'm the guy who caused them to stop building Sandcast. So if you don't if you like Sandcast, then you don't like me, because